What if I told you that the greatest enemy you will ever face is not your competition, not your circumstances, and not the economy? What if I told you this enemy lives inside your own mind? It whispers doubts in your ear when you're about to take a risk. It feeds you comfortable excuses when you're facing a challenge. It quietly and methodically sabotages your every attempt at greatness, convincing you to settle for a life far beneath your potential. This enemy has a name: the weak mindset. For the next video length, we are not just going to talk about this enemy. We are going to declare war on it. We will expose its tactics, starve it of its power, and replace it piece by piece with the mindset of a titan. Stay with me, because this is the most important battle you will ever win. In the opening moments of our discussion, we issued a declaration of war. A war not against any external foe, but against an internal saboteur, an enemy that lives within the 6-inch battlefield between our ears, the weak mindset. We have established that this is the most important battle you will ever fight. But before any warrior can win a war, they must first understand the enemy. You cannot defeat an enemy you do not know. You cannot cure a disease you have not diagnosed. So for the next 30 minutes, we are going to do just that. We are going to step into the role of the master diagnostician. We are going to turn on the bright lights of awareness and examine with unflinching honesty the anatomy of this weak mindset. Before we can build, we must first clear the land. And for too many of us, the landscape of our mind is overgrown with the weeds of poor thinking, fertilized by years of neglect. The purpose of this diagnosis is not to condemn, it is to liberate. For the moment you can finally put a name to the unseen forces that have been holding you back, that is the moment you begin to take your power back. The weak mindset is not a single entity. It is a syndicate of negative patterns, a coalition of self-defeating thoughts. But its power comes from 3 primary and deeply poisonous belief systems. We must identify them, understand how they work, and see how they have been silently operating in our own lives. Let us begin with the first and most common of these poisons. It is a sickness of the will that has plagued humanity for centuries. I call it the blame virus. The blame virus is the instinct to look for an external cause for our internal dissatisfaction. It is the immediate, reflexive act of pointing a finger rather than looking in the mirror. The person infected with this virus has a predictable vocabulary. It is a vocabulary filled with phrases like, "It's not my fault because," or "I would have succeeded, but." They blame the economy for their empty bank account. They blame their boss for their stagnant career. They blame the traffic for their tardiness. They blame their upbringing for their bad habits. They have a long list of scapegoats to explain their lack of progress. Let me tell you the story of 2 ship captains. 2 identical ships leave the same harbor, destined for the same island of prosperity. Midway through the journey, a ferocious storm descends. The wind howls and the waves crash over the decks. It is the storm of life, the recession, the unexpected challenge, the personal crisis. It is the same storm for both ships. The first captain, infected with the blame virus, runs onto the deck and shakes his fist at the sky. He curses the storm. "Just my luck," he screams. "The weather is always against me. We are doomed because of this terrible wind." His crew, hearing their captain's despair, becomes demoralized. They stop working. The ship is left to the mercy of the storm and is smashed upon the rocks. The second captain sees the same storm. He feels the same violent wind. But his first thought is not to blame the external, but to command the internal. He does not waste a single breath cursing the weather. Instead, he shouts to his crew, "The wind is strong, but so are we. Man the ropes. Adjust the sails." He understands a fundamental truth. You cannot change the direction of the wind, but you can always change the set of your sails. He takes responsibility. He navigates with skill and courage. And he steers his ship not just through the storm, but using the storm's own power to reach the island. The storm was the same. The difference was the mindset. The blame virus is a declaration of powerlessness. Every time you blame something outside of yourself, you are saying, "I am not in control. I am a victim of circumstance." It may protect your ego for a moment, but the long-term cost is your own power. You are handing the steering wheel of your life to someone or something else and then complaining about the destination. The architect of a strong life understands that while they are not responsible for the weather, they are 100% responsible for the ship. Now let us examine the second poison. It is more subtle than blame and far more addictive. It is the excuse addiction. If blame is the poison of powerlessness, excuses are the poison of stagnation. Excuses are the well-crafted stories we tell ourselves to justify inaction. They are the drug we use to soothe the pain of our own unfulfilled potential. And they are addictive because they work. They provide instant relief from the discomfort of effort and the fear of failure. I don't have enough time is a powerful excuse. It makes us feel validated in our procrastination. I don't have the right connections is a comforting excuse. It absolves us of the hard work of building a network. But here's the nature of this addiction. The short-term relief it provides is paid for with your long-term future. Excuses are the chains that keep you tethered to the same spot year after year. And the most tragic part is that we often decorate our chains to look like jewelry. We polish them, we defend them, we learn to love the comforting weight of our own limitations. We must become warriors of truth in our own minds. Let us dismantle the most common excuses. I don't have time. The truth is, you have the same 24 hours in a day as everyone else. It is not a matter of having time, it is a matter of making time. Your schedule is a perfect reflection of your true priorities. If you say something is important but it never appears on your calendar, you are lying to yourself. I don't have the money. The truth is, most great enterprises and personal transformations were started with resourcefulness, not resources. Money is often a convenient excuse to avoid the real work of getting creative, of starting small, of proving the concept. An excuse is a dead end. It is the end of a conversation with yourself. A strong mindset, on the other hand, turns every excuse into a question. Instead of I don't have time, it asks, how can I find the time? Instead of I don't know how, it asks, where can I learn how? The person addicted to excuses will always find a reason to stay stuck. The person committed to results will always find a way to move forward. And this leads us to the third and most debilitating poison. It is the master poison that makes the other two seem not only acceptable but justified. It is the victim mentality. The person with a victim mentality has built their entire identity around the belief that life is something that happens to them. They are not the architect. They are merely a brick being tossed around by the forces of the world. This mentality is a dark filter placed over the eyes. Every piece of information that comes in passes through this filter and is colored by it. A challenge is not an opportunity to grow. It is proof that the world is unfair. A success is not a reason to celebrate. It is a temporary fluke that is sure to be taken away. A piece of constructive criticism is not a gift. It is a personal attack. The language of the victim is predictable. This always happens to me. I never get a break. Why even bother trying? Nothing will change anyway. This is the most tragic state of all, because the person has not only built a prison for themselves, but they have convinced themselves that the prison is the entire world. They have succumbed to a state of learned helplessness. Progress is impossible until this mentality is shattered. The shift, while simple, is the most profound a human can make. It is the shift from asking, why is this happening to me, to asking, what is this trying to teach me? It is the shift from seeing a setback as a stop sign to seeing it as a detour, a lesson in navigation on the path to your goal. These, then, are the three faces of the enemy. The blame virus that strips you of your power, the excuse addiction that keeps you in a state of stagnation, and the victim mentality that traps you in a prison of despair. They often work together, creating a vicious cycle that is difficult to break. This has been a difficult diagnosis. It is not comfortable to look at these patterns and see them reflected in our own behavior. But I will say it again, the purpose of a diagnosis is not to condemn, but to cure. The moment you can say, that is the blame virus talking, not me, you have begun to separate yourself from the disease. The moment you can catch yourself crafting a beautiful excuse and say, no, I will trade that excuse for an action, you have begun to reclaim your power. Now that we have identified the disease, We have completed the first and most critical step. We have brought the enemy out of the shadows and into the light. And in our next session, we will begin to administer the antidote. We will begin to forge the weapons of a strong mind. And the antidote, the first pillar upon which we will build our new mental fortress, begins with one powerful, life-altering, and non-negotiable choice. The choice of radical responsibility. In our last session, we engaged in a difficult but necessary diagnosis. We turned on the bright, unflinching lights of awareness and examined the three great poisons of a weak mind. The blame virus that strips us of our power, the excuse addiction that keeps us in a state of stagnation, and the victim mentality that traps us in a prison of despair. It is not a comfortable thing to see these patterns in ourselves, but a diagnosis, no matter how grim, is always the first step toward a cure. And now we arrive at the great crossroads, the turning point. Having identified the disease, we are faced with a choice. One path leads back to the familiar, comfortable darkness of the prison, the path of blame, of excuses, of if only. The other path is steeper. It is more challenging. It is illuminated by the harsh light of truth, but it is the only path that leads to freedom. This path is the path of the antidote. And the antidote, the one single powerful ingredient that neutralizes all three poisons, is not a secret technique or a complex strategy. It is a simple, profound, and life-altering decision. It is the decision to embrace radical responsibility. Now, I use the word radical for a reason. I am not talking about the conventional lukewarm version of responsibility that most people are comfortable with. I am not talking about taking responsibility only for your successes, only when things are easy. I am talking about a deep, total, 100% ownership of your life. Your actions, your reactions, your choices, your emotions, your health, your finances, your future, all of it. This is the moment you stop looking out the window for a rescue and you start looking in the mirror for the rescuer. This is the turning point upon which the entire architecture of a strong life is built. Without it, every other principle we discuss, discipline, resilience, growth, will be built on a foundation of sand. But I know the first objection that arises in the mind. It's a powerful one. It's the voice that says, but wait a minute, it's not always my fault. The economy really did crash. That person really did betray me. I really did have a difficult upbringing. And you are right. This is where we must draw the most important distinction of your entire life. The distinction between fault and responsibility. Fault is a backward-looking concept. It is the act of assigning blame for an event that has already occurred. It is an exercise in history. To focus on fault is to be a judge presiding over a case that is already closed. And what is the power of a judge in a case that is over? None. It is a powerless position. Responsibility, on the other hand, is a forward-looking concept. Let's break the word down. Responsibility. It is your ability to choose your response. While you may not have had control over the event, you always have 100% control over your response. And it is in your response that your entire future is forged. Let me tell you the story of two farmers. Both are hardworking, good people. They live in the same valley. One year, a terrible drought befalls the land. The sun beats down, the rivers run dry, and the crops begin to wither. This drought is not their fault. It is a circumstance beyond their control. The first farmer is a man who focuses on fault. He spends his days looking at the sky, cursing the lack of rain. He sits with his neighbors complaining about the terrible luck, the unfairness of it all. He blames the heavens, the government, for not providing more aid. His energy is consumed by the past, by what should have been. His farm and his spirit wither and die under the relentless sun. The second farmer is a man who focuses on responsibility. He looks at the same cloudless sky. He feels the same dry earth beneath his feet. He acknowledges the harsh reality of the drought, but he does not give it his energy. He accepts that the rain is not his fault, but he knows that the survival of his farm is his responsibility. He immediately asks a different set of questions. Not why is this happening, but what can I do about it? He gets to work. He starts digging a new, deeper well. He researches drought-resistant crops. He devises a new, more efficient irrigation system. He works harder than he has ever worked in his life. It is brutal, but his energy is focused forward on his response. And in the end, while his neighbors' farms are turning to dust, his farm survives. It is scarred, yes, but it is alive. And he is stronger and wiser than he was before the drought. The drought was the same. The difference was the mindset. One man focused on who was to blame and became a victim. The other focused on his ability to respond and became a victor. To make this practical, let us apply this principle of ownership to the 3 domains of your life. First, you must take ownership of your internal world, your thoughts and your emotions. You cannot control the first thought that flashes into your mind. That is often a product of old conditioning. But you have absolute 100% control over the second thought. You have the power to challenge the first one. You have the power to decide if you will entertain it. When the thought, "I can't do this," appears, you are not responsible for its arrival, but you are responsible for your response. You can either agree with it, or you can respond with a second, more powerful thought, "I will learn how." Your emotions follow your thoughts. To take responsibility for your emotions does not mean you become a robot. It means you stop saying, "He made me angry." He did not make you angry. You chose anger as your response to his actions. This is a profound shift. It moves you from being a puppet whose strings are pulled by others to being the master of your own emotional state. Second, you must take ownership of your actions and your inactions. This is where responsibility meets discipline. Every action you take, from the moment you wake up, is a choice. You choose to hit the snooze button, or you choose to get up. You choose the healthy meal, or you choose the junk food. These are your actions, but you are also 100% responsible for your inactions. Inaction is a decision. The choice to not make the difficult phone call is a decision. The choice to not start the new project is a decision. The choice to not save the money is a decision. Every time you fail to act, you are actively choosing to accept your current circumstances. The architect who blames the lack of a building on the blueprint is a fool. The building is absent because the architect chose not to build. Third, and most challenging, you must take ownership of your outcomes and your results. This is where the amateur parts ways with the professional. The amateur says, "I did my best, but the market was bad." The professional says, "My best wasn't good enough for this market. I am responsible for the result, and I must learn how to do better." You are responsible for your results, even when external factors play a role. If your business fails, you are responsible for the lessons you extract from that failure. If you are in debt, you are responsible for creating the plan to get out. If your relationships are struggling, you are responsible for initiating the communication to heal them. This is not about self-flagellation. It is about empowerment. The question, "Why did this happen to me?" leads to a dead end. The question, "What can I do to change this outcome?" is the beginning of all progress. At first, this idea of radical responsibility can feel like a crushing weight. To accept that your entire life is on your shoulders seems terrifying. But I ask you to consider the alternative. If your lack of success is someone else's fault, then your future success must also be in their hands. You are a slave to their decisions, their moods, their whims. If your inaction is because of your circumstances, then you are a slave to circumstance. You must wait for the world to change before you can change. If you are a victim of your past, then you are a slave to a master that is already dead. The truth is, radical responsibility is not a burden. It is the ultimate liberation. It is the moment you break every chain that has ever held you back. You stop waiting for the government to save you, for your boss to save you, for some magical opportunity to save you. You realize, with a clarity that is both terrifying and exhilarating, that you are, and always have been, your own savior. This is the true turning point. This is the moment a person stops being a child, waiting for life to give them what they want, and becomes an adult ready to create what they want. This is the first non-negotiable step of the architect. Before you can even look at the blueprints, before you can order the materials or hire the crew, you must walk onto the empty plot of land and declare with unshakable conviction, whatever is built here, for good or for ill, is my responsibility. Now that you have claimed ownership of the construction site, you are ready to pick up the tools. And the first and most important tool we must master in our next session is the tool that directly combats our addiction to excuses, the powerful tool of discipline. In our last session, we stood together at the great turning point. We made the most powerful decision a human being can make, the decision to accept radical responsibility for our lives. We took the steering wheel of our own ship, renouncing the comfortable poisons of blame and victimhood. That decision is the single most important one you will ever make. But a decision made once is merely a statement of intent, a declaration of war. It is not the war itself. The war is won or lost, not in one grand, sweeping moment, but on the quiet battlefields of your daily life. It is fought every morning when your alarm clock rings. It is fought every time you face a difficult task. It is fought in every choice you make between what is easy and what is right. And on this battlefield, there are two great opposing forces. On one side stands the noble, powerful warrior of your future self, discipline. And on the other side stands the seductive, cunning army of your past self, excuses. This is the core battle. How you manage this daily conflict will determine, more than any other factor, the quality and trajectory of your life. Today, we are going to dissect this battle. We will study the enemy's tactics, we will forge our ultimate weapon, and we will learn the strategy for victory. First, we must understand the nature of these two forces. Excuses are the voice of your past. They are the voice of your old habits, your accumulated fears, your comfort zone. The primary goal of an excuse is to maintain the status quo, to keep you safe, to keep you the same. It is the saboteur whispering in your ear, don't try, it's too hard, you might fail. It's not the right time, let's just do it tomorrow. Discipline, on the other hand, is the voice of your future. It is the voice of your potential. It is the part of you that understands that the temporary comfort of today is the price of regret tomorrow. Discipline is the architect's hammer. It is the force that says the plan is set, the materials are here, it is time to build, regardless of the weather, regardless of the mood. So, let us first study the enemy. To defeat an army, you must understand its tactics. And the army of excuses is masterful in its strategy. The first tactic of an excuse is the disguise of rationality. Excuses rarely show up looking like laziness. They are far more clever than that. They show up disguised as logic, as wisdom, as prudence. An excuse will never say you should be lazy. It will say you've had a very long day. You deserve a rest. It would be unwise to push yourself too hard and burn out. The logical thing to do is to relax and start fresh tomorrow. Doesn't that sound reasonable? It's a brilliant disguise. I can't start my business now because the economy is uncertain. That doesn't sound like an excuse. It sounds like a wise business decision. I can't make that difficult phone call now because I'm not in the right headspace. That sounds like emotional intelligence. But you must become a warrior of truth and learn to see through the disguise. You must ask yourself one simple question. Is this thought moving me closer to my goal, or is it keeping me in the same place? If the answer is the latter, it is not logic. It is an excuse in a clever costume. The second tactic is the poison of tomorrow. Tomorrow is the mythical land where 99% of all human achievement is stored. It is the most powerful word in the vocabulary of the excuse maker. I'll start my diet tomorrow. I'll write that chapter tomorrow. I'll make that call tomorrow. The problem is, you do not live in tomorrow. You live in today. And by constantly deferring action to a future that never arrives, you are not just postponing the work. You are training your mind in the disastrous habit of inaction. You are teaching yourself that the present moment is not for building, it is for waiting, and a life spent waiting is a life wasted. The strong mindset understands that the only time you have is now. The only place the work can be done is here. Now is the language of discipline. Tomorrow is the language of excuses. The third and most powerful tactic of an excuse is to act as a smokescreen for the fear of failure. Deep down, the reason many of us don't start is not because we lack time or resources. It is because we are terrified of what will happen if we try our best and it's still not good enough. The excuse, "I just need to do a little more research," is often a mask for, "I'm afraid to launch my product because people might not like it." The excuse, "I'm waiting for the right moment," is often a mask for, "I'm afraid to ask for that promotion because they might say no." The excuse provides a noble sounding reason to avoid the arena of life where you might get knocked down. It allows you to preserve the illusion of your own potential without ever having to put it to the test. But a life lived in the spectator stands is a shallow one. The architect must be willing to get their hands dirty on the construction site. So, now that we understand the enemy, let us turn our attention to our weapon, the magnificent, life-altering power of discipline. First, we must understand that discipline is a muscle, not a feeling. You would not expect to go to the gym and feel motivated to lift heavy weights every single day. It is absurd. You go because it is on the schedule. You go because you have made a commitment. You go because you understand the principle of cause and effect. Discipline is the same. Do not wait to feel like it. You are waiting for a guest that may never arrive. The professional shows up regardless of their feelings. The act of showing up itself is what generates the feeling of accomplishment. Action precedes motivation. Motivation does not precede action. Second, the battle is won or lost in the daily decisions. The war between discipline and excuses is not one grand battle. It is 1,000 small skirmishes fought every day. It is the battle over the snooze button. It is the battle between the salad and the cheeseburger. It is the battle between reading a book and scrolling through your phone. Each of these choices is a vote. You are casting a vote for the person you want to become. Each time you choose discipline, you cast a vote for your future self. Each time you choose an excuse, you cast a vote for your past self. The person you will be in 5 years is simply the sum total of these small daily votes. And this brings us back to the great choice. The choice you must make not once, but every day. You must choose between the two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Let us visualize these two pains. The pain of discipline is your workout partner. It shows up every morning. It is demanding. It pushes you beyond your comfort zone. It is uncomfortable in the moment, but when the work is done, it leaves you with strength, with energy, and with an incredible sense of pride. It is a productive, purposeful pain. The pain of regret is a shadow. It does not speak loudly. It just follows you. It is the quiet, nagging ache you feel when you see others achieving the goals you gave up on. It is the heaviness in your heart when you realize another year has passed and you are still in the same place. It is a corrosive, empty pain. It is the weight that grows heavier with each passing year. One pain leads to growth, the other leads to decay. You must choose every single day which pain you are willing to live with. So, how do we ensure victory? How do we build this muscle of discipline so that it becomes stronger than the army of excuses? First, you must win the first hour. The first hour of your day sets the trajectory for the next 16. If you lose the first battle to the snooze button, you begin your day with a defeat. You have told your mind that your comfort is more important than your commitments. Win that first battle. Get up when you say you will. Then dedicate that first hour to an act of discipline, not distraction. Exercise, read, plan your day. Do not start your day by reacting to the world's agenda, the emails, the news, the social media. Start your day by proactively engaging in your own. Win the first hour and you will build a momentum that will carry you through the rest of the day. Second, you must learn to trade your excuses for execution. This is a conscious, active transaction. The next time you hear the voice of an excuse in your mind, "I'm too tired to go to the gym," you must stop. Acknowledge it. And then you must say, "I am trading that excuse for one small action." The trade is not, "I will now do a 2-hour world-class workout." The trade is, "I will put on my gym clothes." That's it. Just that one action. More often than not, the simple act of putting on your clothes is enough to get you out the door. Trade, I'm too overwhelmed to start this project, for I will write the first sentence. This is how you dismantle the power of excuses. You do not argue with them. You simply take a small, immediate step of execution that renders them irrelevant. Discipline, then, is not some grim, joyless existence. It is the ultimate tool of the architect. It is the force of will that allows you to take the blueprint of your philosophy and begin the daily, glorious work of building. Without this force, the foundation of responsibility means nothing. The seeds of good intention are never planted. The seasons of life become overwhelming. But with it, with the power of a disciplined mind that consistently chooses action over excuses, you become unstoppable. You become the person who does what needs to be done. And for the person who does what needs to be done, there is no goal that is out of reach. This is the core battle. Win this battle, and you will win the war for your own life. We have now dissected the most critical battle you will face each day. We have identified the enemy excuses, and we have forged our weapon, discipline. This is the point where information must become transformation. And transformation begins with a single, decisive commitment. If what we have discussed so far resonates with the part of you that knows you are destined for more, I invite you to make that commitment now. It's a small action, but it's a powerful declaration. Subscribe to this channel. Consider it your first act of choosing discipline over delay. It is a signal to yourself that you are serious about this journey. Make this a place you return to sharpen the tools of your mind. Make the commitment, and let us continue to forge the titan within. In our journey together, we have laid a powerful foundation. We began with a diagnosis of the weak mindset, identifying the poisons that hold us back. We then made the great turning point decision to embrace radical responsibility, taking full ownership of our lives. And in our last session, we engaged in the core battle, learning to choose the warrior of discipline over the army of excuses. If you have engaged in this work, you have already set yourself apart from the masses. You have started the construction of a new life. But a ship is not judged in the calm of the harbor. It is judged in the fury of the storm. A blueprint is not tested on a sunny day. It is tested in an earthquake. And life, I promise you, will send you storms. Life will test your new resolve. It will test your newfound discipline. It will push against your structure to see if it will hold. This is not a possibility, it is a guarantee. This brings us to the next and perhaps most critical stage of our architectural work, the process of forging. We must now take the raw materials of our new mindset and subject them to fire and pressure to transform them from something merely strong into something truly unbreakable. We are here today to discuss the art of forging resilience, the science of mental toughness. What is mental toughness? Let us first clear away the misconceptions. It is not about being cold, emotionless, or aggressive. It is not about being a bully. The truly tough person is often the quietest person in the room. Mental toughness is the ability to remain committed to your vision and your values, especially in the face of discomfort, chaos, and resistance. It is the quiet inner resolve that allows you to keep going when others stop. It is what separates those who merely start from those who finish. Without it, the first serious setback will knock you down. With it, no obstacle is strong enough to hold you back for long. And where is this quality built? It is not built in a place of comfort. Your comfort zone is the most dangerous place you can live. It appears to be a place of safety, but in reality, it is a place of atrophy. Your muscles do not grow stronger while you are resting on the couch. Your mind does not grow sharper while you are watching mindless entertainment. Growth and comfort are mutually exclusive. The architect who is afraid to get their hands dirty, to sweat, to face the unexpected challenges of the construction site will never build anything of value. Strength isn't built in comfort, it's built in challenge. So, how is this strength forged? We must look to the ancient art of the blacksmith. To create a sword of legendary strength, the blacksmith does not coddle the steel. He subjects it to a violent but purposeful process. First, he puts the raw iron into the heat of the forge. The heat represents voluntary hardship. It is the intentional application of pressure and challenge. The weak mind avoids heat at all costs. The strong mind understands that heat is the catalyst for all transformation. You do not develop mental toughness by waiting for life to hit you. You develop it by intentionally introducing positive stress into your life. Champions don't wait for the championship game to learn how to handle pressure. They simulate that pressure every single day in practice. You must become a practitioner of voluntary hardship. This means choosing to do the hard things, not because you have to, but because you want to build the capacity to handle them. It's the decision to take the cold shower. It's the decision to have the difficult but necessary conversation. It's the decision to take on the project at work that everyone else is afraid of. It's pushing yourself to do one more set at the gym when your muscles are burning. You must seek out challenges. You must stretch your mind. Because every time you voluntarily step into a small fire, you are conditioning yourself to be able to withstand a raging inferno. After the steel is heated, the blacksmith places it on the anvil and begins to strike it with the hammer of resistance. The hammer represents the act of pushing through discomfort. This is the critical moment. When you are engaged in a difficult task, there will come a moment when your mind, your weak mindset, will scream, "Stop!" It will say, "That's enough. This is too hard. Let's quit and try again tomorrow." That moment, that point of resistance, is the most important moment in your training. The amateur listens to that voice and stops. The professional acknowledges that voice and then does one more repetition, one more page, one more phone call. That one more is the hammer blow. Every time you push past that point of perceived limitation, you are hammering the molecular structure of your character into a new, stronger configuration. You are proving to yourself that you are stronger than your excuses. And the more you prove that, the tougher you become. After the heat and the hammering, the blacksmith performs a final crucial step. He plunges the glowing hot steel into cold water to quench it. This quenching is the process of recovery and reflection. It is what locks in the newfound strength. After a period of intense effort and voluntary hardship, you must have the discipline to strategically recover. This is not the same as laziness. This is an intelligent part of the strengthening process. But more importantly, this is the time for reflection. After you have overcome a challenge, you must ask, what did I learn from this? How did I grow? What was the lesson in the struggle? You must extract the wisdom from the experience. A setback that you do not learn from is a tragedy. A setback that you learn from is an education. This is how you ensure that the next time you face a similar challenge, you are not the same person you were before. Heat, hammer, quench. This is the process. It is not an event, it is a lifestyle. But this process of doing is only half the battle. It must be accompanied by a new way of thinking. The mentally tough person operates on a different set of core beliefs. The first belief is that every setback is a setup for a comeback. The weak mind sees a setback as the end of the story. It sees failure as a verdict on its own worth. The resilient mind sees a setback as a necessary part of the plot. Imagine an archer. To shoot an arrow forward with great force, what must she first do? She must pull it backward. The further she pulls it back, the further it will fly forward. A setback is the pulling of the bowstring. It is a gathering of tension, of energy, of lessons that will ultimately propel you further than you could have gone otherwise. It is not a punishment. It is a preparation. The second belief is the internal monologue. This is making me stronger. This is the language you must speak to yourself. As we discussed, in the conditioning of your mind, when faced with a challenge, the weak mind says, "This is too hard. This is destroying me." This language creates a feeling of powerlessness. The strong mind, when faced with the exact same challenge, says, "This is difficult, and this is making me stronger." This simple shift in language transforms the experience from a threat into a training exercise. It reframes the pain as purposeful. You are not just enduring the difficulty, you are using it to forge your own strength. And the third and most important belief is the anchor in any storm. I control my response. This is the echo of radical responsibility. The mentally tough person understands that while they cannot control the storm, They have absolute control over the ship. They do not waste energy on what is outside their control. They focus every ounce of their being on what they can control: their mindset, their actions, their ability to adapt and grow. This belief is the source of all inner peace in the midst of external chaos. When you combine the process of the forge with the beliefs of the resilient, you become a different person. You are no longer someone who fears challenges. You are someone who seeks them. You are no longer someone who is broken by failure. You are someone who is educated by it. This is the ultimate outcome of mental toughness. It is not a life free from problems. It is a life where you possess the unshakable inner confidence that you can handle any problem that comes your way. And that, my friends, is a freedom that money cannot buy. It is the resilience that allows the architect to continue building through bad weather, through supply shortages, through unexpected crises. It is the toughness that ensures the great work of your life is not just started in the enthusiasm of spring, but is finished no matter how many winters you must endure. This is the art of forging. Now, pick up your hammer and find your fire. We have journeyed deep into the forge. We have done the hard internal work. We have confronted the poisons of the weak mind. We have embraced the profound power of radical responsibility. We have engaged in the daily battle of discipline versus excuses. And we have learned the art of forging resilience, of using the heat of adversity to make ourselves stronger. We have, in essence, been forging a sword of incredible strength and character. But even the finest sword in the world will rust and dull if it is left out in the corrosive rain. The most resilient spirit will eventually be worn down if it is subjected to a relentlessly toxic environment. This brings us to a crucial and for many the most challenging aspect of our architectural work. We must now turn our attention from the forge within to the climate without. It is not enough to be the architect of your character. You must also become the architect of your influence. You must learn to master your environment. There is an unseen law at work in your life every single day. It is as real and as powerful as the law of gravity. You cannot see it, but it is constantly pulling on you. It is the law that dictates that you will become the combined average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is the law of association. This is not a mere suggestion. It is an unforgiving principle of human nature. The people you allow into your life are not passive observers. They are active co-creators of your future. Their thoughts, their habits, their standards, and their ambitions are constantly seeping into your consciousness, shaping you in ways you do not even realize. Think of it this way. In any room you enter, you are one of 2 things. You are either a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer is a passive instrument. It simply reflects the temperature of the room. If the room is 72 degrees, the thermometer reads 72 degrees. If the room is cold and cynical, a person acting as a thermometer will become cold and cynical. If the room is full of complaints and excuses, they will begin to find more things to complain about. They are a product of their environment. A thermostat, on the other hand, is an agent of change. It does not reflect the temperature, it sets the temperature. If the thermostat is set to 72 degrees, it will work tirelessly heating or cooling until the entire room aligns with its standard. A person acting as a thermostat brings their own attitude, their own discipline, and their own vision into the room and influences the environment around them. For years, you may have been living as a thermometer. Today, that ends. The architect is a thermostat. But to set the temperature, you must first be intensely aware of the room you are in. Let us dissect the mechanics of this powerful influence. Your environment infects you through 3 primary contagions. The first is the contagion of mindset. Attitudes are more contagious than any physical illness. If you spend your time with people whose default setting is cynicism, it is only a matter of time before their realism begins to erode your optimism. If you surround yourself with people who see problems in every opportunity, you will soon stop seeing the opportunity in any problem. Let me tell you about a man with a brilliant idea. He was full of passion and vision. He shared his idea with his 5 closest friends, whom he had known for years. The first friend said, "That's a bit risky, isn't it?" The second said, The timing is not right for that. The third said, are you sure you have what it takes? They were not being malicious. They were simply reflecting their own limited mindsets. But their words were like small, steady drops of water on a stone. Day after day, week after week, their subtle negativity wore down his enthusiasm. Eventually, the brilliant idea was quietly placed on a shelf, another victim of a contaminated environment. You must fiercely guard your optimism and your vision. It is a fragile flame, and you cannot afford to let the cold breath of cynicism blow it out. The second is the contagion of performance. Your habits and your standards of effort will inevitably drift toward the average of your peer group. If your friend's idea of a good evening is 3 hours of mindless television, your desire to spend that time reading a book will begin to feel strange, even antisocial. If your coworker's standard is to do the bare minimum to not get fired, your commitment to excellence will be met with suspicion or even ridicule. The gravitational pull of mediocrity is immense. You can try to fight it with sheer discipline for a while, but it is an exhausting uphill battle. It is infinitely easier to achieve your goals when you are in a current that is already flowing in the same direction. Surround yourself with people who hold themselves to a higher standard, and you will find yourself naturally rising to meet it. The third, and most critical, is the contagion of ambition. Your vision of what is possible for your life will rarely exceed the average of the people you associate with. If you are the most ambitious person in your circle, you are in the wrong circle. If your friends are content with their current station in life, your deep hunger for growth will be an unspoken indictment of their complacency. To maintain harmony, a powerful subconscious pressure will mount on you to shrink your dreams to fit their reality. You will stop talking about your big goals because it makes them uncomfortable. You will stop striving so hard because it makes them look bad. And without even realizing it, you will have traded your destiny for their approval. You cannot soar with eagles if you continue to spend your days scratching for worms with the turkeys. This brings us to a difficult but necessary part of our work. You must conduct an honest environmental audit. I want you to take a moment and identify the 5 people you spend the most time with. And for each person, you must ask 3 questions. Be brutally honest with yourself. This is for your future. First, what does this person have me thinking? Second, what does this person have me doing? And third, what is this person helping me become? Based on your answers, you can categorize your associations. Some are elevators, they lift you up, they challenge you, inspire you, and believe in your potential. Some are maintainers, they are good people, but they keep you where you are. They are comfortable. And some are excavators. They are actively digging a hole of negativity, complaints, and low standards, and they are trying to pull you into it with them. The most painful realization for many is discovering that a lifelong friend or a beloved family member is in fact an excavator. So what do? This is not about being cruel. It is about being a wise architect. This requires a clear strategy. First is the art of limitation. For the excavators in your life, particularly those you cannot or will not cut out completely, you must practice loving them from a distance. This is not amputation. It is careful pruning. You can love your family, but you must choose your mentors. You can cherish your old friends, but you do not have to give them a front row seat in your mind. This means limiting your exposure. It means shorter phone calls. It means politely changing the subject when the conversation turns to gossip or blame. It means protecting your garden. You do not hate the weeds. You simply understand that they cannot be allowed to choke the plants you are trying to grow. Second is the science of expansion. While you are limiting the negative, you must be aggressively expanding the positive. You must actively seek out the elevators. You must find your eagles. Where are they? They are where growth is happening. They are at the seminars, the workshops, the industry events. They are in the libraries. They are in the gyms at 5 a.m. Make it your mission to put yourself in environments where growth is the norm. And when you get there, your goal is not to take, but to give. The fastest way to attract a person of value is to become a person of value. Work on yourself so relentlessly that they seek you out. Third is the power of immersive study. What if you feel isolated? What if you look around and see no eagles? The good news is, you can associate with the greatest eagles that have ever lived. You can make the wisest philosophers, the most brilliant entrepreneurs, and the most courageous leaders your personal board of directors through their books. You can have lunch with a titan of industry every day by reading their biography. You can be mentored by the greatest minds in history by immersing yourself in their work. Do not let your zip code determine your peer group. In the end, this all comes back to the principle of radical responsibility. The environment you find yourself in is not an accident. The environment you tolerate is the environment you have chosen. The architect understands that the location of the building is as critical as its design. A magnificent mansion built on unstable ground is a monument to foolishness. You have done the difficult work of forging your internal strength. Now you must have the wisdom and the courage to build your life on solid ground, surrounded by the clean air of high standards and the sunlight of positive ambition. This is the work of the architect of influence. Choose your ground wisely. We have journeyed through the essential architecture of a powerful mind. We have diagnosed the enemy. We have embraced the turning point of responsibility. We have forged the warrior of discipline and the resilience of mental toughness. And we have learned to become the master of our environment, not its victim. You now possess the blueprints for a fortress, a structure of character and will that can withstand the storms of life. But a fortress, no matter how strong, is a static thing. It is a defensive structure. A life of true success, of fulfillment, of adventure is not meant to be lived on the defensive. It is meant to be a grand, forward-moving offensive. It is meant to be a journey of progress. This brings us to the engine, the dynamic force that powers our entire structure forward. The element that ensures the person you are today is not the same person you will be a year from now. We are here to discuss the most exciting commitment a person can make, the commitment to intentional growth. Let me share with you a fundamental law of nature. Everything in existence is in one of two states. It is either growing or it is dying. A tree is either reaching for the sun or it is slowly rotting from within. A river that stops flowing becomes a stagnant, lifeless pond. There is no third state. There is no such thing as maintaining. The same is true for the human mind, for our skills, for our relationships, for our very spirit. If you are not actively, consciously, and intentionally growing, you are by default passively decaying. This is why you see the tragic phenomenon of people who do not have 20 years of experience, but rather 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. They stop learning, they stop stretching, they stop seeking, and they wonder why their life feels stale, why the opportunities have dried up. They have allowed their river to become a stagnant pond. The commitment to growth is the decision to remain a flowing river. It is the conscious choice to ensure that your future self is always wiser, stronger, and more capable than your present self. Growth is not automatic. It does not happen by accident. It does not come with age. It comes with intention. So how do we practice this? How do we make growth not just an occasional event, but a way of life? We must focus on 4 distinct dimensions of intentional growth. The first is intellectual growth. This is your mental diet. We have spoken of the mind as a garden. Now let us speak of it as a factory. The quality of what you produce, your ideas, your decisions, your conversations, is entirely dependent on the quality of the raw materials you put into it. The average person consumes a mental diet of junk food. They spend their evenings consuming hours of passive, trivial entertainment. They scroll through endless feeds of gossip and outrage. They are consumers, not students. And then they wonder why their lives lack substance, why their thinking is cloudy. The person committed to growth understands that they are responsible for their own curriculum. They become a student of life. This means, first and foremost, they are a reader. You cannot be a leader in any field if you are not a reader in your field. The book you don't read won't help you. Develop the habit of reading every single day, not just for pleasure, but for ideas. Read with a pen in your hand. Capture the thoughts that challenge you, that inspire you. A single idea from one book can change the entire trajectory of your career. Build a library. Let your home be a testament to your commitment to learning. This is about sharpening the axe. A woodcutter who spends all his time chopping with a dull axe will exhaust himself for little result. The wise woodcutter takes time out to sharpen the axe. The time you spend reading, studying, and learning is not time off from your work. It is the most important part of your work. The second dimension is skill growth. This is sharpening your axe for the marketplace. Your personal economy is a direct reflection of the value you bring to the marketplace. It is not about how hard you work, it is about how valuable you are, and your value is a function of your skills. The commitment to growth means you are in a constant state of apprenticeship. You must look at your career, your business, and ask a brutally honest question. What is the one skill that if I were to master it in the next 12 months would double my value? Perhaps it's public speaking. Perhaps it's negotiation. Perhaps it's learning a new software. Whatever it is, you must identify it and then attack it with ferocious discipline. This requires humility. To learn a new skill, you must be willing to be a beginner again. You must be willing to be a fool. The master of any craft was once a disaster, but they had the humility to learn and the discipline to practice. Do not let your ego stand in the way of your growth. Be a student always. Your income will thank you for it. The third dimension is character growth. This is tending your inner garden. It is not enough to grow in intellect and skill. A person can be a brilliant technician and still be a bankrupt human being. The most important growth is the growth of your character. This is the spiritual dimension of life, and it has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with who you are when no one is watching. It is about growing your integrity, your compassion, your courage, your patience. How do we do this? We do this through the practice of reflection that we have spoken of. We use our journal to analyze our own actions. Where was I dishonest? Where was I impatient? Where could I have been more courageous? It is about holding yourself to a higher moral and ethical standard. It is about working on your own spirit, because you can gain the whole world in terms of money and skill, but if you lose the integrity of your own character, you have made a poor trade. The ultimate goal is not just to do well, but to be good. And the fourth dimension is experiential growth. This is stretching your comfort zone. Knowledge from books is theory. Character from reflection is internal. But true growth happens when theory and character are tested in the crucible of real-world experience. You must intentionally put yourself in new situations that stretch you. Growth and comfort cannot coexist. The moment you feel comfortable, you have stopped growing. This means facing your fears. If you are afraid of public speaking, join a club. If you are shy, make it a goal to start a conversation with a new person every week. It means traveling to new places, experiencing new cultures, and challenging your own perspective of the world. Collect experiences, not just things. A life of growth is a life rich with the stories of things you have tried, places you have been, and challenges you have overcome. A life of stagnation is a life with one story told over and over again. Be the person who, at the end of their life, runs out of time long before they run out of experiences to share. These are the four dimensions of a life committed to growth, but we must also understand the process. First, you must understand that growth is always preceded by discomfort. The feeling of being awkward, of being uncertain, of struggling, that is not a sign that you should stop. That is the sign that growth is happening. Those are your mental and spiritual muscles tearing so they can rebuild stronger. Learn to love the feeling of being slightly out of your depth. That is where the magic happens. Second, you must be willing to be a fool. To learn, you must first admit that you do not know. This is difficult for the ego. But the person who is too proud to ask a dumb question will remain dumb. The person who is too afraid to look clumsy while learning a new skill will never become graceful. Embrace the humility of the student. And finally, remember that growth is a choice, not a feeling. You do not wait until you feel like growing. You schedule your growth. You commit to it. You make it a non-negotiable part of your daily routine. This is where your discipline serves your commitment. This commitment to growth is the engine that powers the entire architectural process. It is what provides the new, better seeds for you to sow each spring. It is what gives you the new strength to handle the winters. It is what makes you a more valuable associate to the people in your environment. And it is the engine that will inevitably lead you to our final topic, raising your standard. Because the more you grow, the more you realize is possible. The more you learn, the less you are willing to settle. Your growth will naturally demand a better life from you. So do not let your life become a stagnant pond. Make the choice today to become a flowing river. Commit to the daily, intentional process of becoming more than you were yesterday. This is not a chore. This is the greatest adventure of your life. It is the engine of progress. Start your engine. We have come to the end of our architectural journey. We have stood together on the construction site of your life, and we have done the hard, necessary work. We began with a diagnosis, identifying the self-imposed prisons of blame, excuses, and victimhood. We found the key to unlock those prisons with the great turning point of radical responsibility. We engaged in the core battle of discipline versus excuses, forging the will to act. We learned the art of forging resilience, turning the heat of adversity into the steel of mental toughness. We became the masters of our environment, choosing our influences with purpose. And we ignited the engine of progress with a relentless commitment to daily growth. You now possess the complete set of blueprints. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the strategy. But now, we must install the final and most crucial component. It is the guiding system for the entire structure. It is the gyroscope that ensures that your life does not just stand, but that it soars. It is the signature of the master architect upon their work. We are here in this final session to discuss the ultimate standard. We are here to talk about the decision to live a life of excellence. Let me begin with an inescapable truth. Your life, as it is right now, your health, your relationships, your career, your bank account is a perfect external reflection of your internal standards. A standard is not a goal. A goal is something you reach for. A standard is the line you draw in the sand, the minimum level of performance and behavior that you demand from yourself. It is the foundation below which you refuse to fall. Your income will rarely exceed the standard of value you demand yourself to provide. Your physical vitality will rarely exceed the standard of health you set for your daily habits. The quality of your relationships will rarely exceed the standard of communication and integrity you hold for yourself. Life does not give you what you want. Life gives you what you are. And what you are is a direct result of the standards you tolerate. This brings us to the most dangerous enemy of greatness. It is not failure. Failure is a loud and effective teacher. The most dangerous enemy is a single seductive phrase, good enough. Good enough is the lullaby of mediocrity. It is the gentle whisper that convinces you to stop one repetition short, to turn in the report that is merely adequate, to give the apology that lacks true sincerity. It is the philosophy of just getting by. Failure is an event. Mediocrity is a disease of the soul. It is the compounding effect of 1,000 good enoughs. The good enough workout leads to a body that is merely functional, not vibrant. The good enough effort at work leads to a career that is merely a job, not a calling. The good enough relationship leads to a partnership of convenience, not one of deep connection and passion. Let me tell you the story of two stonemasons. Both were asked to build a wall for a great cathedral. A visitor came to the site and asked the first mason, "What are you doing?" The mason sighed, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said, "I'm laying bricks." It's hard work, but it pays the bills. His standard was good enough. He did what was required. The visitor then went to the second mason and asked the same question, "What are you doing?" The second mason's eyes lit up. He paused, looked at his work with pride, and said, "I am building a cathedral that will stand for 1,000 years. I am creating a work of art for the glory of God." Both men were doing the exact same task, but they were operating by two entirely different standards. One was simply laying bricks. The other was building a legacy. Which life do you imagine was filled with more purpose? Whose work do you believe stood the test of time? To live a life of excellence is to decide that you are no longer in the business of just laying bricks. You are in the business of building cathedrals. So, how do we do this? How do we escape the gravitational pull of good enough and begin the ascent to a life of excellence? It is not a wish, it is a process. The first step is a powerful, conscious decision. You must at some point get disgusted with being average. You must get tired of your own excuses. You must reach a point where the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. It is in this moment of profound self-respect that a new standard is born. It is the moment you stand up and declare to yourself and to the universe, no more. From this day forward, my new life begins. The second step is the redefinition. A new standard is not a vague desire. It is a precise set of new rules for your life. You must take the time to redefine what is acceptable in every key domain. What is your new standard for your mind? The old standard might have been to allow any thought, any news report, any piece of gossip to enter and take root. The new standard says, my mind is a sacred space. I will only allow inputs that strengthen, educate, and inspire me. What is your new standard for your body? The old standard might have been, as long as I'm not sick. The new standard says, my body is the physical vessel for my ambition. I will demand vitality from it. I will fuel it with excellence and move it with purpose. What is your new standard for your work? The old standard was to meet the job description. The new standard is to become so valuable, so excellent in your execution that you become indispensable. You no longer work for a paycheck. You work for the impact and the artistry of what you do. And what is your new standard for your character? The old standard might have been, to be honest, when it was convenient. The new standard is an unwavering commitment to integrity, to kindness, to keeping your word, especially when it is difficult. The third and most critical step is the alignment of actions. A standard that is not embodied in your daily habits is nothing more than a wish. This is where all our previous work culminates. Your new standard is the why. Your discipline and consistency are the how. If your new standard is excellence in your health, your discipline is what gets you to the gym, and your consistency is what keeps you going for years until vitality becomes your new normal. If your new standard is financial independence, your discipline is what makes you save and invest that first dollar, and your consistency is what allows it to compound into a fortune. Your daily habits are the living, breathing evidence of your true standards. Show me your daily routine, and I will show you your true standards, regardless of what you say you believe. This is the final ascent. This is the culmination of all our architectural work. A life of excellence is not a life of perfection. You will still face winters. You will still make mistakes. But the difference is that your new standard will not allow you to stay down. It will compel you to get back up, to learn the lesson, and to strive again, armed with new wisdom. The ultimate reward of this journey is not the applause of the crowd. It is the quiet, unshakable pride you feel when you look in the mirror. It is the self-respect that comes from knowing that you are giving your best. It is the profound freedom that comes from a life lived on your own terms, according to your own highest vision of yourself. Let us bring it all together. We began with a diagnosis to clear the land. We laid the foundation with radical responsibility. We built the walls with discipline and consistency. We weatherproofed the structure with resilience. We chose the neighborhood with a mastery of our environment. We ignited the engine with a commitment to growth. And now, your standard of excellence, that is the signature of the architect on the finished masterpiece. It is the final declaration that this is a life built not by accident but by design. A life of purpose, a life of strength, a life of honor. The choice that stands before you now is the same one that stands before every human being. Will you settle for a life of good enough, or will you dare to demand a life of excellence? Will you continue to be a person who lays bricks, or will you decide today to become the architect of a cathedral? The blueprints are in your hands. The time for planning is over. The time for building is now. Go and build your masterpiece. The price is high, but the promise is a life without regret. And this journey is one that requires constant reinforcement. If you are ready to pay the price, if you are committed to living a life of excellence, then I invite you one final time to make this channel your training ground. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Join a community of individuals who are also on this path, who refuse to settle, who are committed to becoming the architects of their own magnificent destiny. Let this be your daily reminder to demand the best from yourself. The blueprints are in your hands. The time for planning is over. The time for building is now. Go and build your masterpiece.